event.
This is really big. I know we promo a bunch of stuff all the time. This is really cool. Welcome back to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols, still here with Paul Pierce and Kevin Arnovitz. And some of you at home may have heard that Kevin Durant is going to be a free agent this summer. We mentioned it once, twice,
yes.
18 times. And it's only September, and we're talking about July. KD wants to handle the process differently this time around. He told our Nick Friedel that he wants to be more honest than he was back in 2016 when he left OKC for the Warriors. And by the way, that's not to imply he was being dishonest. I think he just wants to be more transparent, right, this time. And he said, my thing is just be honest. I was honest with my decision, but just outwardly, if people ask me about it, don't be ashamed to talk about why I decided to move teams, switch teams, saying it's not the end of the world. I didn't do anything against the law, you know what I'm saying? That's what I thought happened the first time. So, my KD to English translation
I think he's saying, by not being honest, that he didn't come out and say, I'm going to the Warriors because I didn't want to play with Russ. I mean, that probably would have been the most honest answer, right? I mean, you're playing with a superstar point guard to go play with another superstar point guard. So that's what I take from this when he says being honest. On his next journey, if he goes anywhere else, let's see what he has to say.
I mean, I'm all for honesty and transparency. My thing with Kevin is, I just wish he cared a little less. I just think he's a two-time NBA Finals MVP. I mean, kind of unanimously one of the top 3 or 4 players in the world. And, he's got these burner accounts and he's watching the conversation on social media. Very few people are privileged enough to be as good at his job as he, good at their job as he is at his job. And it's who cares?
I know, but that's how you feel. I mean, this is the thing. Look, yes, if I was managing his PR or whatever it was, I would say my advice to you is to do this. In this, but I will stand here over and over again and say we don't get to decide how Kevin Durant feels. And if he feels that this bothers him, we don't get to all say this shouldn't bother you, Kevin. That's how he feels.
I am saying it the way
I'm not hide behind a cloak, like you said.
I'm not telling him how he should feel. I'm not one of these guys who feels like, a guy should take loyalty over the money. No, what I'm saying is if I were his friend,
right?
If I had a friend who was uncommonly good in a really high-profile field, I would say, hey, it's not about anybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's what I'm saying. I'm not telling him he shouldn't be insecure about public perception. It's not. You're right. I don't live in those shoes. What I'm saying is that's what I would prescribe to him as a friend.
I love showing all the Russ thing because I do think what you hit on, Paul, is true. That was obviously a huge subtext of his move. He wouldn't and didn't address it. Russ obviously did address it in his own Russ photography vest wearing ways. And the fact that Kevin wouldn't really talk about it, I think he thought would dampen the conversation. And it's funny, I tell players all the time, just because you're not talking about it doesn't mean the rest of everyone else and the fans aren't talking about it. You can't control the conversation. So the real way to have an influence on what the conversation is to put stuff out there about it and talk about it.
And I think that's what it was. I mean, so what is it going to be this time? If he leaves Golden State, it's not going to be about I didn't win with them or I don't like playing with them. I guess the next conversation is, being honest, is I went here for the money, for maybe L.A. Lakers, maybe New York, maybe for the marketing, the off-the-court stuff.
Or maybe I wanted to be the guy. I'm so sick of everyone saying that.
But to Paul's point, I mean, what does this sound like? Yeah, it was a money grab. Or, you know what, I liked it in Oakland, but too many cooks in the kitchen. What is he going to say?
Well, I mean, I think the Warriors are going to pay him whatever he wants, right?
Most likely, right?
Right. So I'm not sure it's going to be a money situation. If he leaves, I assume, if he might stay, we're not trying to break him up. If he decides to leave, which is what he's addressing here, I assume it would be some version of, hey, I've done this with a group of people, and there's obviously been a lot of static about the super team, and I want to try something new on my own.
I think it'll be all about his brand. Getting to himself, creating his brand, making it even bigger. Because he's on the stage with the Beatles right now.
Right.
I mean, he's sharing the stage with 3 other guys. So it's about maybe going solo and just blowing up his brand as he faces the downward slate of his career when he gets up to be 35, 36.
His Paul McCartney in the Wings phase.
There you go. Okay. You guys can be his advisors, and that's I like that whole band going solo analogy. That's very good. You should call KD and give that to him. Oh, that's good.
That's what most of the great ones do.
That's right.
Go solo eventually.
Let's talk about how the game is being played. A point of emphasis for the NBA officiating this year is freedom of movement. Here's the league's head of referee development and training, Monty McCutchen. He is providing officials, this is one of their strategy sessions where they bring all the refs together and talk about the new season. And he was giving them an example of what it means and a very cool look into their process. Take a look at this.
Wraps around the waist are fouls this year. End of story. Put air in the whistle. Blow it. First one, let's go obvious. Corey Joseph understands that he's beat on the switch. Rodney's going to slip, and we get the tug. Pretty easy, right? Well, we would all call that. It's a wrap. It's a hold, really. But do you see the wrap there on the hip? That's what we're looking for this year.
First of all, can we shout out Monty McCutchen's clothing?
Yes.
Because it is always
His
exceptional.
sartorial flair is second to none.
Flawless. Paul, how do you feel about this freedom of movement emphasis?
Well, the NBA has been preaching freedom of movement for the last 10+ years. So it's no surprise to me that they're gearing everything toward the offense because, I mean, let's face it, offensive basketball is exciting to watch. When you see teams score 115, 130 points, it's exciting for a fan. I mean, you don't want to see a lot of grabbing, holding, bumping, team scoring in the 80s. You know, that was my brand of basketball in the early 2000s, which when I go back and watch, wasn't that exciting to watch. But now it's geared more toward the offense. No more emphasis on defense. You know, so, hey, it's an offensive league we're in. Offensive era that we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, the league figured something out about 15, 20 years ago, which is these are incredible athletes who do freakish things. And the more we get to exhibit that on a nightly basis on television, the more money we're going to make, the more the fans are going to enjoy.
I covered the 2007 finals. They had not figured it out at that point.
That was, I mean, it was in the pipeline for a while after the Jerry Colangelo
roll
committee.
with this 20 years ago thing, but yeah,
but I mean, but that's basically it. Like we want to see freakish athletes do things that only like 10 or 12 people in the world can do. And the more you can do that on a nightly basis, especially in a world where this phone, where you can pull up that highlight while you're, waiting for your table at dinner.
No one's pulling up a clutch and grab.
Right. And so you want to create as much of those great 20-second clips as you can. And that's the point.
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of that, at least at the beginning, as players and officials get used to the game being called even a little bit more, as you say, it's been a trend, but even a little bit more this way, point of emphasis, you're going to get more fouls, right? And we've seen some fouls go up in the preseason. That stops the game.
The flip side of that, you don't want it to turn into like a penalty battle to where now every call is made. Now you're watching a game where so many free throws are being taken. So it's going to have to balance it out. You know, they're going to have nights where they don't call it as much because you want the free flow game to go on. You want the clock to move. You don't want to be watching people.
Video.
You don't want to watch people go to the free throw line all day. See, that's a foul. They don't call that. Look at that. That's a foul in today's game.
Right.
Oh, that's a foul. This is a foul. Foul. See, they don't even call.
Right?
See, I played into a tough era right there. Those are all fouls today.
And he walked uphill both ways to school, people. I will say, I mean, we are seeing it. So far, this preseason, they're calling 9 more fouls per game than they did in the preseason last year. But again, it is preseason.
It's a down payment.
And in the the regular season, producer season, my year, then the regular season. And as you say, this is the preseason. They want to get everybody used to it. If they have to pay the price with more fouls.
Preseason basketball contractually obligated to be unwatchable. This is the time to make this down payment, get everybody conditioned to the new rules.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's going to go that way throughout the course of a game. They're not going to be making those same calls in the last 3 minutes. You're going to be able to get away with a lot of grabbing and holding in those last 3 minutes of the game, and it's always been like that.
I wanted to ask you about defending in the NBA. I mean, there was a big move away from hand checking. And I think you came into the league right when it was still generally permissible. How much of a difference did that make? We hear a lot about it. Everyone says, well, that's what sparked the offensive era. Is that it? Do you believe that? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. When you could just run through the lane or dribble past your man without getting that hand check, because when you're beat on defense and you get that hand check, it buys you a step to get back in front of it. Or when you're cutting across the lane and you have that guy chuck you right there in the middle, it buys the defender a step to get back with you. So now, if you beat somebody now and you don't get that hit, you're getting a layup.
Right.
If you go by and you have a step on them, you're getting to the rim. So, I mean, that's what we want to see. We want to see freedom of movement, more offensive flow to the game instead of guys beating up on each other. And I like the way the NBA is going with this. So I enjoy it. It's much more fun to watch. It was fun then to watch because, it was a tougher era. But, we're going into the new times. This is what basketball should be about right now.
Absolutely. And they're doing all, look, every year we see some flow of the game improvements. It's one of the things I love about the NBA is they're not afraid to make Stay tuned. But here's what The Jump recommends. NBA.com posting their annual general manager survey. Check out who the anonymous GMs chose as
What a
the player they would
surprise.
most want to build around.
Ooh.
Giannis over
Giannis?
Anthony Davis. Kevin is going to come back for that conversation later in the show. Stick with us. We'll be talking.
Budweiser and Jim Beam introduced the Budweiser Reserve Copper Lager, a rich lager aged on Jim Beam bourbon barrel staves with hints of vanilla and caramel rye, followed by a deliciously smooth finish.